looking at Herbert Marcuse in probably his last interview, or one of his last. He would die 3 months later of a stroke. Seemed fine to me. He seemed happy. He was married 3 times, never divorced. His first 2 wives died, and then he died before his 3rd wife. I'm posting this as further evidence that efforts were made to smear Marcuse as pro-violence when he clearly wasn't. He even spoke out against it. He advised people to not do that. This is going to be about 28 minutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. So we have a title screen, then it goes blank. We'll wait that out. I have to have the AC on. It's still very hot out. I've left it on. Well, that's a little loud for me.
Viewpoints, Critical Philosophy, a personal perspective with Herbert Marcuse, Emeritus Professor of Philosophy at the University of California at San Diego.
He's a happy guy.
Your Viewpoints host is Helen Hawkins.
And she was a tool.
Herbert Marcuse is one of the best known and one of the most controversial of contemporary philosophers. Born and educated in Germany, Marcuse came to the United States in 1934 and became an American citizen in 1940.
Then he smiles.
The most widely read of his several books are Eros and Civilization, A Philosophical Inquiry into Freud, and One-Dimensional Man, which made him the intellectual idol of New Left militants in the late 60s. Dr. Marcuse, what do you consider the primary function of philosophy?
Well, this is supposed to be a personal statement. For me, philosophy is critical philosophy.
Seems to be doing this.
The concern of critical philosophy is the human condition.
Obligation.
It seems that human beings, men and women, have had a rather frustrating, hard and harsh and repressive life throughout history. This, it seems, has not improved at all with technical progress. Now, critical philosophy tries to find out what are the reasons for this condition, and even more important, what are the real possibilities of building a society in which this would no longer be the case.
The truth hurts.
In the preface to your Reason and Revolution,
this woman
Hegel
right
and
there,
the Rise of Social Theory in 1941, you said that you hoped to revive the power of negative thinking. Is that what you mean by critical philosophy?
That's one aspect of it. Negative thinking in the sense that not everything is accepted at face value, that conformity can be a very repressive attitude, and that negative thinking in the form of a critique, of a real critique of existing conditions, is in itself a progressive force, or can be a progressive force.
She has a prune face.
So do you see the role of the philosopher as an agent of historical change?
Exactly.
Do you think so?
That is one of the things in which, well, this is a personal statement, because I would say that the majority of my colleagues would not agree with it.
Have you then been criticized for this position?
I have been plenty criticized.
Passive-aggressive.
But I don't
from
mind.
The repressed woman.
Now, you identify yourself as a Marxist.
Dr. Helen
but
Hawkins.
We hear the word
Yes.
Marxist used for a wide variety of positions.
PhD in
what
history,
does Marxist mean to you? As you
Well, let
practice
me first say that I never denied that I'm a Marxist. I don't deny it today, although, as you just mentioned, if I look around and
English
see what calls itself Marxist today, I would
just
rather
get the
not
same
use it.
answer. Like,
For
I would
example,
feel quite honored. to be sitting
more
at
or
the
less
same
despotic
table,
left-wing
Mr.
regime in the
Marx.
world is called a Marxist regime. There's no connection between the two. What I mean by Marxist is somebody who still takes Marx's idea of a socialist society as a free and democratic society seriously. And that is what I'm trying to do, and to find out whether there are any tendencies which point in this direction today.
Now, it would appear from what I have read of your work and the comments that I've seen on it that the kind of social change your critical philosophy would lead toward might involve the necessity for revolution. For you, what kind of a revolution does that mean?
He's still getting smeared.
In the sense of
it's
violent
like
upheaval,
1979.
or gradual change, or
How can
what?
she be so
Well,
stupid?
we cannot, if we look at history, we cannot find any example of a non-violent revolution, including the American Revolution. So we cannot expect
San Diego.
that this continuity of violence would suddenly stop. Although Marx himself has foreseen the possibility of a peaceful transition to socialism, and he has even mentioned in this connection the United States
You a
as
commie?
one of the countries where by democratic vote socialism could gain a majority. I must say frankly that today it seems to me the chances for such a non-violent revolution are worse than they were before.
Do I read you correctly, though, that then a philosopher or philosophy should encourage revolution?
A philosopher, and especially a philosopher working at the university, should not encourage and should not advocate. If he or she presents the facts as they are, and the tendencies which are observable in our society, then the students will by themselves get the idea that a good change
He's just a
is
professor.
necessary and is possible.
I'd
He's
like
just
to
a
return to
professor.
what might be the ultimate implications
Moron.
of that position a little later, but
He's just a
first what I'd like to do is
professor.
to look at some of your work.
Sound like the fat
first book
wasn't
that
that
really
fat
caught
Albert?
the
Hey,
attention of
Albert.
people outside of academia was
Hey.
Eros and Civilization in 1955. And it does seem that that book suggests many of the ideas that you later
Suggesting you have a
elaborated
prune
in
face.
future work. You
Marcuse,
call that an
Marcuse's
extrapolation
funny. He'll be like, yup,
of
that's
Freud.
true.
Because I use hypothesis of Freud's going beyond.
No one can shake this guy off his game.
In other words, what I say and state in Freudian terms is not necessarily that which Freud himself would have used and approved of.
It's unfortunate he has
What
to
you've
waste
essentially
time
done in that book
explaining
is to challenge
obvious
Freud's own
things.
suggestion in Civilization and its discontents
Why
that
is she so
repression is a
bitter?
necessary part of any civilization.
Who broke your heart,
Well,
honey?
I think you are going a little too far.
Am I?
Yes,
See
definitely.
Marcuse, he's like, no.
Because it is true
He's so
that
generous
I think
with
neither
his
I nor
smile.
anyone else can imagine a civilization without repression. I make the distinction
wonder if he and
between
Anna
repression
went
and what I call surplus repression. That is to say, in the course of civilization, many taboos, many restrictions have been imposed which are actually not necessary anymore in terms of the possible development of human beings. So I certainly would not say that civilization can be without any repression.
The
You
Harold
would
and
say
Maude
that the
taboo,
degree
the
of repression,
90-year-old.
The degree of repression is decisive.
and you lay that to technological changes that make this kind of repression no longer as necessary?
No, I wouldn't say that the repression today is no longer necessary. It still is.
Why is she at beginner's level for thought?
That is to say, repression that goes beyond the basic taboos and the basic prohibitions any and every civilization depends on.
Now, you use the term eros in that book to signify
Why do you
more
always
than
have
the
to
ordinary
bother him?
person, I
Yes,
think.
I think I use the
That was
term
from a line
in
from
agreement with Freud
Dance Hall Rackets
in a
Jam.
much wider sense. Eros is not identical with sexuality. A sexuality, according to Freud,
I'm
is
listening.
a partial and local drive, whereas Eros actually activates the entire human organism and the entire human personality.
The sun,
He identified
the
Eros with
universe.
life instincts. And I think that is a very good explanation. Understandable, however, only if we add the other primary drive of Freud, the destruction
I learned a few
instinct
things
or
today.
death instinct. So you would have in the human organism two primary drives: erotic energy, life
I was having
instinct,
trouble exhaling.
and destructive energy, death instinct. Now, I still use Freud's terminology because it seems to
Some
me
guy said
that
on
our
video,
present society is characterized
it's
by a
breathe
considerable
in,
strengthening
right
of the
behind the
destruction and
navel.
death instinct over and above Eros and the life instincts.
But
That is my general
And
sketch.
you suggest that by
And then I'm holding it in, but
focusing
you
on
breathe
the-
it
By
out.
strengthening the
Yeah,
life
I heard that.
instincts, change to the better could be achieved.
Now, that book has been criticized,
Guy
as
said,
has all of your
you
work,
tune your skin.
on
that's
several
going on
grounds.
if you
One,
have
that
trouble
it
exhaling.
does distort Freud.
So breathe
some
it
would
out
say.
to the
Of
universe,
course,
let it
I
out of the
guess any
skin.
hypotheses can be interpreted by others as they will. But another suggestion has been made, or criticism has been made, that you do a lot of asserting without supporting
my
arguments
normal
or evidence. How do you respond
Can you
to
give an
Life
those?
example of
Mode
that?
right now.
Well, for
It may well be that I say many
There's
things that cannot be
16,
proven in the
46
sense of a
left of this.
scientific proof as we
Had
understand
my
it
dinner
today.
and pill, heart
But I
pill,
use hypotheses,
cholesterol pill for that
and
stuff.
I think I do
I don't want to get too skinny.
and
Starting to get
fortify
very
the hypothesis
toned
by
from
pointing to
the
facts.
qigong.
I think one of the
It's
contexts
spelled
of that kind of criticism was that
Q-I-G-O-N-G.
your
It's working.
type of philosophy could
It's
be
amazing.
considered to be in opposition to the, quote, scientific or
Why is she moving her
Kantian
hands like
or,
that? Her hand like that.
what are some of the other
Why does
terms
she
for
have to
that,
make
where
funny?
the only thing
fishy
that can be accepted
faces?
as real is that which is demonstrable through
Oh,
scientific
demonstrable.
evidence.
That's a
Well, I would
PhD
accept
level word.
demonstrable, I would reject according to scientific evidence. Because then we would use a concept of proof
You
and
must have been
evidence,
doing this out of a
which
favor
is
to a
valid
friend.
only for the natural sciences, physics, biology, whatever it is.
She has no
but
clue.
cannot be
She's
simply
not.
applied to the
This
humanities
guy,
and social
I doubt he
sciences.
was Noam Chomsky. going
Another
on
comment
every
that's
single
made
show,
about
no
that
matter
book
what.
is that it is very optimistic, and in fact possibly too optimistic in terms of its view of human nature.
We'll have to
if
shut
I
up
could use that term,
eventually
potential.
because
Uh,
it gets to the
do
point
you
where
feel
she
that it is
again.
an overly optimistic view?
I desperately
Or did we
try
already
to
watch that?
maintain my
It's that other part
optimism
already.
even today.
I think there might be another
I
part where she
actually
tries to get
want to
him
be pessimistic, and I think
He
there's much
feels compelled
justification for it.
to
But if I
deny
look around,
violence.
there are still so many things which are good and which are positive.
Maybe you already did that
And,
earlier.
there are still quite a few tendencies that make and indicate a change to the better that I'm
I
rather
turned this too
optimistic.
low for
Well,
myself.
now, your 1964 book that is really the most widely read, One Dimensional
Oh, he
Man,
seems to be
Yes,
disowning
unfortunately,
or
I
Was
think the
very
Freud book is much
pessimistic.
better.
you say that
The
it was,
Freud book is much better.
yet in that One Dimensional Man
Is he saying
book,
Freud's book
you
was
severely
the book he wrote on
indicted
Freud
modern
was much
industrial
better?
society
So it looks like
and
he
the kind of person that has resulted.
he's pushing himself
from
a
it.
little bit
Well,
away
I
from
would
one
say
direction.
not I indicted it, indicts itself.
Is the
He's just a thinker
kind
who wrote
of,
some stuff.
attitude
They
that
try
is
to
reflected
smear
in
him
that
as
book
some
a reflection
revolutionary.
of the times, and have you changed your ideas that
Talk
you
about
expressed in
thought
that book at all
police.
since
It's a
then?
reflection of the times. I have changed my ideas somehow.
Yes, he's backing it up a little bit.
1968-69. Because I see in these years the emergence of a new and potentially rather promising and powerful opposition against the destructive tendencies in our society today.
Now, in One-Dimensional Man, you essentially said, if I am not misinterpreting you,
Just
that
flatten
modern man in
that
industrial
line.
society is so much the captive, as it were,
She
of
deflated.
his own technological affluence,
Which he cannot control.
that he has become part of the system, and
She's
that
stuck
the
in the
working
world of
class,
ego,
which was so long
status.
expected to be the
Marcuse
locus
has
of
had status. The whole
change or
he doesn't have to
revolution,
worry about
is now
status.
co-opted into the system.
Not that he
And
wasn't
the
snared.
indictment
Not
you
that
made
he
of
got his
things like
proper
television and
due.
other kinds of
He'll probably get
public
his
media
proper
as
due
ways of controlling society.
more when
were
he's
very
not
sharp.
alive.
Do you still feel that there is
That's not true either. As we
Uh,
see, there's nothing on the internet
that much of a
in
sense
regards
of
to
capture of the people by
elevated
the
thought.
system?
Well, it
It's
certainly
more
isn't any
posers like
lighter
this woman
than
for
it was
face.
before. The degree of control, especially after the use of computers and so on, has been intensified rather than weakened. But what for me is the optimistic sign is that in the opposition of 68, 69, it was demonstrated that
Whiny man a little bit.
not escape, that a
The
coming out
Germans
of, that a
seem to have
breaking
a
with
bit of a
the
whiny man
universal controls
tendency.
is possible. Possible at that time still in small groups, collective
Why is she so
communes,
bitter?
whatever there is, but the serious attempt to try relationships between human beings which are not in a repressive sense controlled.
See, I'm like him too.
from
I
above
studied
or
that
from
guy.
outside.
You didn't see that the
You
what
gotta be
is considered
versatile.
to be
You
the
can't just be
failure
all about
of
the
the
economy
French
and
student
revolution. You
revolution, as it were, in 1968.
gotta look at
as a
culture.
setback then.
It may be a temporary setback.
You have to
I would
look
not
at,
say, as practically everyone
whatnot.
says, let's apply it to this country, that the
You have to
student
look at all the
movement,
rest of it.
was defeated, that it doesn't exist anymore. It has changed its form, it still exists. And what is to me the most important thing, some of the values proclaimed by the student movement have actually penetrated the society as a whole and are diffused among the population as a whole.
Wish they had
For
shown that
example,
woman's
let me give
face.
you
I
one
wanted to
example, otherwise it's
see
too
if there's a
abstract.
trigger.
The general, almost general
He didn't mean it
awareness
the gutter mind
that
way.
one does not have to
But I
work
still wanted
8
to
hours a day
study.
plus the hours required.
I get
for
information
transportation
because nothing
in
needs
an
anything.
inhuman and routine
99%
recognized
are
way that one
just
can
going
live
through the motions
much
anyway.
easier
So I'm able
without
to
giving
study.
up most of the achievements of culture and so on. This is one of
Like
the
that woman on one of those
achievements
Star
of the,
Trek
student
sequels,
movement,
she
and this
could
can be demonstrated.
understand the emotion,
Now, you did
penetration.
say in One-Dimensional Man that the missing dimension was the dimension of critical awareness of negative thinking.
Yes.
Now,
She's
have
like,
you
how
then
can
decided
negative
that
thinking
since
be
then
positive?
that
Since
awareness
then.
has developed?
One-Dimensional Man came out in 64, and the student movement 68, 69.
Now, I think probably the most controversial
They make him out to be
of
some.
your work is
more than
what
he
you
was.
said in the essay Repressive Tolerance,
Not that he wasn't that much. He
in
was
which
a lot.
you suggested that liberal toleration
She
of
would've
other
been
views
so cute if
was illusory,
She
that
wasn't
the
so
only views
uptight
that
and bitter.
are tolerated, in fact, are the status quo type views, and that
Why, you're the
what
status.
dissent is tolerated
Status?
is only tolerated
Well,
so
is
far
it
as it has
status
no
or
effect.
status? Why is
And you suggested that there really ought to be some sort of
shush the
suppression
mouth.
of
I'm
the
trying to
kinds
get
of what you call destructive
Marcuse. Come on, man.
life.
I'm afraid I still think so.
And I don't think he was a Freemason.
And let me give you an example. I believe
He's
that
too
if
happy.
the Weimar Republic in Germany
He
would
just
not
knew
have
you have to.
tolerated the Hitler movement
You have
to
to
the
be
very
groovy.
end,
It's the
1933,
only way to
we
live.
may well have
You have to be in the right side of history.
a world war and
Why
the
is it his fault
extermination
that
of 6 million Jews.
he was pure
Of course, the
in his
major
mind?
question that's raised about that
What kind, that's right, what
is
kind of
who
opinion?
decides which
Look at
and
her with
when
the 666,
ideas
the
should
way
be
the fingers
suppressed.
are curved.
I would say
That's not
every
an okay.
halfway intellectual normal being.
Now what's he doing with his
In,
finger?
for example, reading
Well,
what
see,
Hitler
he has the
constantly
number.
said
He has.
and constantly published.
It's not a 666 by
That this
Marcuse.
is a deadly
Well, maybe it is.
destructive movement.
Herbert.
It doesn't need any philosophical or
All right,
scientific proof for
that
it.
wasn't
Well, we can see that
just
looking back at it, but in the context of
throw
today,
his hand in the air there.
who is going to make the
Why is she
decisions as to
chicken
what
packing with
kinds
that
of
finger? Oh, the
dangerous
open
ideas
palm.
should be suppressed? Do you count on the democratic process
This
to do
is
that?
body language.
To tell you the truth, yes. Who decides
This week's
today
episode,
what is to be
Herbert
repressed and what is
Marcuse
not to
and
be
Nolan
repressed?
Hawkins.
Who decides today?
I'll
Again,
decide.
I
I
would
said
say
that in a
if
previous
what I said
video.
in
I'm
the
going to
press
do the
of
judge. I'm going to
tolerance
judge.
makes any sense. It
I don't have to do all the
presupposes
judging.
a
Anyone else can
really
judge
democratic
too.
society in which the people
should be
themselves
based
can
on
be shown and can see
facts.
what is destructive and what is not.
Right, he's like
That
sick
sounds
of them.
almost unachievable.
Who the hell are you
That is
to talk like
certainly
that to
for the
him?
time being utopian. And I would like to say one thing very clearly. In the present
Smoke it or pass
situation
it.
in this country, I would certainly defend to the very last the civil liberties and civil rights, because that is the only counterforce against the intensified control and repression.
So that what that really means then is that your suggestion that some ideas are so destructive that they must be repressed couldn't happen.
I wouldn't say it couldn't happen. I wouldn't say that. But it is at present in this country not acute.
Now, you did say that in recent years you've seen an emergence of the kind of new sensibility
Yes.
that some of your later
About
work
6 minutes to go.
suggested was really needed, that there would be a whole new kind of man or person
Exactly.
developing.
Yes.
Is that something that you see as happening only in Western civilization, or do you see it in other parts of the world as well?
I would say you do see it in other parts of the world too, perhaps in some of the liberation movements in the Third World, for example, but essentially it is confined so far to the advanced industrial countries in the West.
And your critical philosophy has in fact been directed primarily to analyzing that society.
Definitely, because that is the society I know and that I can do.
I do
Now,
these
you
two
said
things.
in your 1972
I
book,
recommend this to
Counter-Revolution and
anyone out
Revolt,
there.
that the counter-revolution was in the ascendant, and that the route to change really was through theory, through
An
education,
app.
through persuasion.
It's called Breathe to Relax.
You then see the role of the
B-R-E-A-T-H-E.
universities, the
Number
colleges,
2,
as very
relax.
strong
All one word
in
there.
the change process.
They could
should be able to
have
find
a
it.
very decisive effect.
Do,
But
you
unfortunately,
inhale
as you know, there's a
5.5
tendency
seconds.
to transform
Let me
the
see to make sure.
universities in professional schools at the
Yeah, I've seen
expense
this.
of such disciplines as
That,
humanities and
that
social
interview with
science,
Marcuse, I found it a little
which
bit
is a
annoying.
very
The way she
dangerous
henpecks
tendency,
him.
because it actually stifles
4.5
any criticism
seconds
that goes
inhale.
beyond a very well-set
5.5
framework.
seconds exhale.
Do you feel that
So when
the
you go into
major
the
centers
settings-
of critical thought
do
are in
4.5
universities today?
inhale,
I would say some of them
5.5
are
exhale.
still in
And
the
you do that.
universities. Quite a
Do
few,
like
and
12
probably
cycles
the
or 16
majority outside.
cycles.
In the
You do that about twice a
manifestations
day,
of what is still
3
called
times a day till
the
you get used to
New
it.
Left.
Maybe once a day after
Speaking
a certain
of the New
point.
Left, at the
But that
time that One-Dimensional Man was picked up by the student militants particularly, there were a lot of New Left people, or people who were identified by that
yikes,
term,
that's
who
gonna
were very much
be
supportive of
recorded.
your ideas.
Pause that.
Are you still considered one of the leading lights in that framework, or have they gone beyond you or in different directions?
They have gone beyond me, they have gone below me.
I don't know what I just did there,
I never
but
considered myself
so that's
as
called
the
breathe to
idol,
relax.
as the father or grandfather
So
of
through
the
that,
New Left.
I have
What
learned,
happened was
I've
a
mastered
coincidence of
how to
ideas
breathe
and
in
opinions. The students didn't have to
and
read
breathe out
One-Dimensional
slowly.
Man in order to protest,
relax
in
through
order
that.
to rebel. So I still
Gain
consider
more
myself
control
very much
of that mind, body.
sympathetic and part of
There's a top-down
whatever
processing,
left of
their
this
brain,
movement.
all the stuff
Now,
on our
the
mind.
students of that era, you say, didn't have to read the book, primarily because they were experiencing what you were describing.
They were experiencing in their own body,
Body
and
is
mind
memory, the body
what
has
motivated
life.
them to rebel.
Do you think they, when they did read your book, understood your work?
And then the
That I
Qigong.
don't know.
Because that
You just
is
gotta
one
keep
major
watching a bunch
question
of
that's
videos.
raised about
If you
your
find one
writing,
you like, then you
that
stick
they are
to it.
very difficult to understand,
make it
even
your
by
own.
people who have a background in the philosophical
And you start to
framework
learn
that you use.
I know, and I regret
what's
it
going on
deeply.
with the
I
breathing,
try
with the
to write
body
clearer.
movement.
On
So
the
the
other hand,
breathing
I take comfort from the
dictates
fact
the
that quite a few
movement.
people do and did understand.
It's all one.
The question I'd like to get
You don't
back to in
injure
the very
yourself.
short time we
It's
have left
very good
is
for the
that
health.
if one argues for change, and if that change will require revolution,
Under 2 minutes
and
on
if
right here,
revolution
right? She
is
does
unlikely
mention
to come about
revolution
without
again.
violence, does not that then give validation to violence, which in turn
She's trying to
may
corner him
perhaps
as
validate
promoting
terrorism?
violence. And that's what's happening to all of us in this day and age. That's what
Advocacy
Convo
of
Couch,
violence
that's what Anarchy in the Morning, that's what all that
is
crap
under
is
all
about.
circumstances
Jimmy Dore, Joe
in
Rogan.
our situation.
It's all about entrapment
should be
and
taboo.
control.
Violence may be considered
But they can't
justified
control
only as counter
Everyone. They can't control my
the
consciousness.
sentence and repressive tolerance, I explicitly said that there is a so-called right of resistance, a natural right of resistance for suppressed minorities after all legal means have been exhausted. I also added that if then these minorities
That
rebel,
was sort of like Malcolm X.
that might break the chain of violence which we had throughout history. I am a little less optimistic, respectively, this topic. I would say the breaking of the chain of violence is probably only thinkable in a long historical process, but not...
This guy's thinking big picture.
Well, Dr.
They come
Marcuse,
out to
I
be
know many
some
Americans will disagree with some of
dude
your ideas. if not all
generate
of them.
fomenting revolution
And
in
yet,
America.
I'm sure we can all
Yet he
benefit
didn't
from
even think it was
considering the
possible.
questions you ask about our society.
Yet even
and
here,
the
like 10
goals
years
we
later,
seek.
this
Thank
prune
you very
face
much for clarifying your views for us. And
takes
thank you
another
very much
stab
for
at the
joining us.
guy.
Good night.
Good night to you too, prune face.